I'm here with your Reader's Digest version of the Easter Sunday sermon. Do you need resurrection in your life? Maybe your self-esteem has taken a beating. Maybe there's some sort of addiction or life pattern that is imprisoning you. Maybe a hope has died. Maybe you've lost an opportunity. Maybe any number of things could have happened. Maybe you've suffered a great loss. This is the first Easter without my mother, for example. But whatever that loss is, whatever that obstacle is, I'm here to tell you that today is the day of resurrection. And as we look at Luke's account of the resurrection story, we see the women coming to the tomb. And in doing so, they are facing their loss. They're not running away from it. The guys don't want to have anything to do with it. They want to stay as far away from it as possible. But the women, as is so often the case, are willing to face the issue of loss and grief. Not only do they face it, but they embrace it. They go back to the tomb not simply to have a vigil or something there for a little while. They take spices and they take oils and the things that are needed to do proper justice to the body of Jesus. In other words, they want to show respect for their friend. They want to do their duty by him. And in the manner of doing that, they discover something a bit odd. They walk into the tomb and they discover that the body's gone. And then, before they can get a word out edgewise, all of a sudden there are two heavenly beings that are there in lightning bright robes. And these angels ask them a question: why do you seek the living among the dead? Well, the women are probably thinking, oh, I don't know, because we saw Jesus die a horrible death a couple of days ago, and we saw where he was buried, and the Romans don't mess up crucifixions. He's not mostly dead, he's all dead. But the point of that question, why do you seek the living among the dead, is to get the women to slow down, to think for just a moment, and in turn to get us to think for just a moment, and to consider what seems to be a hopeless situation from a different perspective, and that is God's perspective. And by doing so, we begin to entertain the possibility that what is impossible with us might be possible with God. We consider the possibility of an impossible possibility. And then the angel says, look, he's not here, he's been raised. And the women run from the tomb with a sense of wonder. And they go and they tell the guys back home, or at least that are hiding out in Jerusalem, that, this is all that's happened. And of course, the guys being logical and very rational, they don't want to have anything to do with this. They just think this is nonsense. But then the curiosity gets the better of Peter, and he goes to the tomb, and he sees that things are just as the women have said. And so he's left wondering. The point with this is that Christian faith really begins with that why do you seek the living among the dead question. It's that question that makes you stop and go, huh, what? It's that question that makes you consider the possibility that there is indeed another perspective from which to see things. And that perspective is God's. And when we see things from God's perspective, we begin to realize that what we thought was impossible actually might just be possible with God. And so therefore we have the opportunity to confront the losses in our lives, the loss of my mother, or whatever loss that you've had, or whatever challenge, to consider that maybe things are not lost. Maybe things are not as grim as they seem. That because of God, because of the resurrection power of God, we can have hope even in the darkest of circumstances. I remember this past year standing at the grave of my mother's and watching the coffin lowered down, and then the lid to the crate, or it's not a crate, the vault rather, lowered onto the vault, and that sense, that everything was gone. But in the midst of that, I still had hope, because I knew that God had raised Jesus. God will raise my mother, and I leave you with that hope, that no matter what loss you've sustained, no matter what obstacle stands before you, whatever and wherever you need resurrection power, it is there, because Christ is risen.